Hi, this is Travis, the creator of Barry the Movie Demon here, and I recently, in the last year or so, started this channel, and I had no idea what I was doing. I hesitated for about 6 months even trying to start it, because I didn't know how. I talked to some friends on Facebook. They recommended a couple different things, Lightworks, and one was DaVinci Resolve, which I'm going to show you here. This is DaVinci Resolve 17. This is a free version of DaVinci. The free version of DaVinci has more features than most of the paid versions of other software, so that's why I went with it. It just has a little bit of a learning curve. It's really intimidating, actually, to learn how to do anything. If you look at my earliest videos, the first few, I think I did with the built-in Microsoft Windows 10 video editor thing, and I used Lightworks for one or two of them, free version as well, until I learned how to do DaVinci. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go through 10 things that will help you learn the basics of DaVinci Resolve. So for mark in, mark out, we're going to first import some media. So over here we have our media pool. Should probably start, this is where DaVinci starts you, on the, I believe this is the cut tab. Yeah. You want to right click here in the media pool. You could also go through the file menu, go to import media. You're going to find your media. I have it in this DaVinci Resolve tutorial. I have clip 1 and clip 2. These are cuts from another video. I just cut a little piece out for demonstration purposes. So this is our media. You can import as many as you want, video, audio, and still images. And in the edit tab, or actually right here, you're able to make bins, which I'll show you, bin clips. This is really for a more complicated project than this, but I would put these video clips here and here, and then I would maybe have one for audio, one for music, one for still images, that type of thing. Then you go over here to the edit tab. This is where you do all of your editing. I'm going to open the clips bin. I'm going to show you how mark in and mark out works. So any clip up here that you double click should open up here in the preview window. Hey, look at that. You're at the beginning here. This is the end of your clip. You can play it and listen and see it and everything. In 3, 2, 1. Right there's where I want to start. I do my little 3, 2, 1 lead in, and then I start the script or the off the cuff remarks, whatever. So I go over here to this mark out, or sorry, mark in. That's where I want the clip to begin. Then I'll go until I want it to stop. Welcome back for another things I watched on Amazon Prime, or stuff I watched on Amazon Prime. Been back at it, watching weird, low budget, sometimes no budget horror films. I want that to stop right when I'm done with horror films. You can use the left and right arrows to go back a frame or two. And then that's my mark out point. Now that doesn't help you down here in your timeline where you do all your editing, but it made this clip, when I drag it to the timeline, only start at mark in and only end at mark out, and the rest is cut off. So it's a way to preemptively cut the beginning and end of your clips so that you don't have to do it down here and make a mess. Because once this thing gets polluted with 100 different things, it's kind of hard to manage that. So that's mark in and mark out. Number 2 is transform. Now that we have a clip here in the timeline, we can go over here to the inspector view. If it's not clicked on, go ahead and click inspector. You have video, audio, sometimes effects if you've applied an effect, transition if you've applied a transition, that kind of thing. But we're going to go strictly to the transform part up here. Now if you watch my show or any of my videos, you know you don't usually see this brick wall over here where my fireplace is, or the mic boom, or the microphone filter arm, or anything like that. I go closer in and I shift this over. So the way you do it here is the transform section on the video. Make sure you've got your video selected, and you just move the X position over. X is left and right, Y is up and down. You can move the Y, but I usually don't. You can use Control Z or Command Z on a Mac to undo any changes you make. So now I've got this black spot on the side, and I use the zoom function, and I just zoom in. And zoom by default is linked, so your X and Y zoom at the same time. If you unlink them, it looks weird because you're stretching it. I'm going to undo that change and relink. But that's how you use transform. You can also rotate your screen. The anchor points I've never actually messed with, but I believe that's just to stop your video from going anywhere. And then your pitch, which is that way, and your yaw, which is that way. And then you can flip it vertically or horizontally with the click of a button in transform. And that's how you use transform. Number 3 is cropping. I'm going to undo all of our changes here that I've done recently. There we go. I could have just deleted the clip. It would have been much easier. But I'll pull clip 1 down here again. And say I want to leave it like this. I don't mind some black space or whatever. I'll even turn off transform. We'll go here to cropping. This is also in the inspector view under video. And I want to cut this brick wall off. So I'm going to turn up the crop right. And it just basically draws a black box over it. And then maybe I don't want the whole ceiling. I just want to go there. Now, with this, you would probably use transform to move it over and zoom. But I do use this a lot when I do my green screening because my green screen does not take up the entire shot. So I have to cut off the sides to do a green screen effect. And it's useful for other things. If you're putting a still image in, which we'll do later, you may want to crop a border off of it or something like that. But that's how you do cropping. You can also crop the left side and the bottom. You can turn up the softness on the crop, which makes it kind of fuzzy instead of a hard edge, if you want like a vignette effect. And then retain image position, I have never actually used, and it doesn't look like it's making any difference. But if you really want to, you could look up on how to do that yourself. You can also undo anything you do in this area with these undo buttons, or Control Z or Command Z on your keyboard. But that's how you crop a video or picture. Alright, so transitions. You'll find transitions here under the effects tab, video transitions, and there's a whole list of them. You need more than one clip. I actually have a file here that's my logo, which is called Headshot01, and I'm going to apply an effect. It kind of showed it to you there in the preview window, but when you drag an effect over, you either can put it at the end of this clip, sometimes the beginning of the other, or right in between. And I tend to put them in between. If you want to zoom in on the timeline a little, you can use this plus symbol here. And here's my effect, this little box. In the inspector, it goes straight to the transition screen because that's what it is, and it's a barn door type. I could also change it here. I use a lot of blur dissolves in my regular videos and slides. But you can change alignment, things like that. Vertical barn door or horizontal. I'm going to do horizontal just to change something. And let's go into the actual transition and see what it looks like. Up the border, it makes a little border between two clips, and you can color the border. So maybe I want it to be this color. See, now it turns that color. And feather is actually has to do with the speed or kind of the way it goes out. It'll like start opening fast and then slow down towards the end if you turn on feather. So here's without feather. Just opens like that.
Horror films.
If we feather it, you don't notice a lot of difference. But if we stretch this transition out, if we could stretch it out, make it longer, then it would. This particular one doesn't stretch, but let me take it off and I'll show you my slide transition I use a lot for my pop-ups in my horror movie show. Slide. The slide can be stretched usually, but we'll do a bottom-up slide.
Films.
And it pops that up. And if we feather that, we can even do an ease in.
Horror films.
It kind of ramped up. It went from really fast or really slow to really fast. Now, if we want to do ease out,
Horror films.
on the out of the transition, it slows down a bit. And that's feathering. But any transition you could throw in here. There are also audio transitions, which I don't mess around with much, but you could toy with those if you've got a lot of audio clips to chain together. But your video transitions, most of these things in this list are free until you hit the resolve effects towards the bottom. And then there are a lot of them you could build yourself in the Fusion tab if you take the time to learn DaVinci Fusion. But that's basic transitions. Number 5 is titles. Titles are, well, title cards if you have them by themselves on the timeline. Let me show you that by taking what I've got and moving it so I have some free space at the beginning. Under the Effects tab again, Toolbox, Titles. There's a slew of titles. Fusion titles, regular titles. Let's do the jitter title. So I don't normally use this one. So let's play with it. So the title itself, once you click on it, over in the inspector, you'll get, under your video, you actually have a dual tab here. You can use your transform, cropping, dynamic zoom, all the other options that are there. But for the title itself, let's get in the middle of the clip so we can see it. And right now it just says sample. And we can say jittery title. That just makes a title appear. And this one writes from left to right all on its own, which is an effect I can show you how to do, but this one does it by itself. I like to use Text Plus a lot, which won't have the jitter effect unless you apply it somehow, but you still got a lot of control over things. Now this one, since it doesn't write left to right, is already up here. Over here in the title section, it's called Text Plus. I can change the words here to something else. Oh, it did not select it all. I'm sorry. There. Now we've got something other than custom title. In the settings here, you can still do the transforming, sorry. You can still do the transforming, so I'm going to move it down to the bottom so it's not right in the middle of my face. And I want that left to right writing effect, which is in the title section towards the bottom. But I don't like Open Sans as a font. Some of these don't work, like this one. Sorry to say, not every single font works here, but this one looks nice. And let's maybe make it something like that, so it's not just plain white. And we'll get into keyframes later, and I'll show you this in the keyframe section. But you can use keyframes to mess with this write-on thing, which will let it write from left to right, like the jittery title does. By default, this one does that, and I bet you that you can't change it. If I took it into Fusion, I bet I could change it, but that's okay. I'll explain that later when we go over keyframes, but that's how titles work. You can either put them on top of a video, here making a second video layer, and overwrite words over your video, or you can have them by themselves as just a plain title card. Noise reduction, number 6. I'm going to take these titles out of here. You just use the delete key. Actually, I forgot, when things are overlaid over video, deleting them cuts part of the video out. So I'm going to hit D for disable. It'll just disable that title. You no longer see it. Okay, so we're going to do noise reduction. Noise reduction is a effect here. It's under the effects. It's audio effect right here, and it's down here. I believe they're alphabetized. Yes, noise reduction. I haven't favorited. You can favorite things that you use a lot, but let me turn up the volume on my computer. The sound from, you'll hear like a buzzing underneath.
Welcome back for another things I watched on Amazon Prime, or stuff I watched on Amazon Prime.
Actually, I'm going to turn up the audio on this, just because it's much easier to hear imperfections when it's very loud.
Welcome back for another things I watched on Amazon Prime, or stuff I watched on Amazon Prime. I've been back at it.
Hear that? So let's apply the noise reduction filter. I leave it on manual and look. The only thing I ever click here is learn. And then sometimes I have to re-click it in the effects tab, but here, see, now the effects tab lights up when this video is selected because there's an effect on it. There's an audio effect on it, and learn is toggled on. Let's hear that same section from before again.
Welcome back for another things I watched on Amazon Prime, or stuff I watched on Amazon Prime.
There's a little there, yeah, but all of that humming in the background is gone, which is nice. I apply this to all my audio now. I didn't used to because I didn't know it existed. I did use the de-esser, de-hummer before, but noise reduction actually takes care of those for the most part. And if you toy around with the settings, if you know a lot about audio settings and equalizers and things, you can do a lot in DaVinci. I just don't know those things, so I just use the noise reduction, and it serves its purpose for me pretty well. So a cut is taking a piece of video and making two pieces of video out of it, essentially. And I'm going to do it right here. I do it with a keyboard shortcut. I don't even remember the other way to do it. It's one of these buttons, I think. But the keyboard shortcut is Control or Command and backslash. It's right underneath your backspace key. Now I have clip 1 and clip 1. They're both called the same. But this made a cut right at that time period. So you can't even tell if you watch it.
Amazon Prime. I've been back at it.
Except for the noise reduction filter is different on the second one. I'll turn it back on Learn. So that was just for my benefit.
Amazon Prime. Noise. Been back at it.
But you can see it. And there's a cut here. What does that do for you? Well, this video looks exactly like this one. Maybe I want to cut out this chunk of audio here because I don't like what I said. That's probably not the case in this case, but we're going to do it anyway. So I put another cut here. With this one selected, I can just press delete and it goes away. So now it's this and then this, but I'm not in the same position, so it's going to look weird if it just jumps. Like I just jitter for a second. So what I generally do in this situation is on the video transform, on the second clip, I'll change it a little. I'll zoom in, I'll zoom out, I'll move it to the side, whatever. So now it jumped.
Stuff I watched on Amazon Prime. Weird, low budget, sometimes no budget horror films.
Okay, mine froze there for a second because it was busy rendering. It'll do that from time to time if your computer's not strong enough to handle DaVinci.
Sometimes no budget horror films.
See, it moves normally now. But you see the cut there.
Right. Weird. Low budget.
If you watch a lot of YouTube videos like I tend to do, you'll see that a lot. But that's cuts. You can do a lot with cuts. You can also do things like J cuts and L cuts, which would be another video. And you can look this up. There's plenty of tutorials on YouTube on how to do those. If you want audio to continue into the video clip, or if you want audio to start before the video clip starts in another video clip, that's a J cut and an L cut. Actually, I think it's an L cut and a J cut. I think I had them backwards, but still, this is your basic cut, and I use this a lot to cut out when I clear my throat, and if I flub a line and have to start over, and then I do this little video transition from here to here to kind of disguise it. It's not disguised, but it looks more natural than the same static shot forever and my head just turning a different way all of a sudden. Okay, now we're going to go over the basics of keyframes. Keyframes apply to a lot of things. Let me turn on the transform here. These little things here are keys or keyframes. And they apply to audio, they apply to video, they apply to your effects sometimes. It depends on your effects. But they're basically points in time. So there's a thing called dynamic zoom you can just apply, but we're going to do it through keyframes, so I can show you how they work. So to do a keyframe, you basically click this thing on the thing you want to keyframe. Now it's not going to do everything, but I want to do dynamic zoom where the shot starts out wide and then ends up a little closer. So I'm going to start with my zoom here, and I'm going to put a keyframe at 0.0. It's the very beginning of the video. I could put keyframes at every frame if I want, and have to manually change this for every frame. But anytime in this clip when I change the zoom, it'll create a new keyframe, and the video will just go to that. So what I want is this effect where I'm in here and I want this zoomed in. So you created a keyframe, it turned it red, and then I can go back to the previous one, and we're going to play it and see what it looks like. I'm going to actually turn this audio down because it's sort of loud, but let's look at it.
Welcome back for another things I watched on Amazon Prime, or stuff I watched on Amazon Prime. Weird.
See? It went from one to the other. one keyframe to the other. So you can, like I said, put them anywhere you want in this timeline. If you wanted to do every single frame by hand, you could, but keyframes make it really easy. Now here is one thing that I've done a few times. I'm going to cut my image here off the end, and I use it sometimes to make a thing kind of like bounce in and out type deal. Anything you put up here will show up over the video. And this is a transparent background image, so I'm going to put it over here. And at the very beginning of the image, I want you to not be able to see it. So I'm going to zoom it all the way out to 0 and keyframe it there. And then I'm going to go to like here. I'm going to have it really real big. Way too big for the screen. And then at the end, let me go back a frame. At the end, I'm going to zoom it to a reasonable size. So it's going to hit those 3 frames. It's going to start from disappeared to way too big to down to normal.
Low budget, sometimes no budget horror films.
And you probably want a little sound effect to go in there, and you would place that down here on another audio track. You can just right click here and click add track. But I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just showing you that you can, like a spring of sound or something to that effect. You'd probably want this to go a lot faster than that too. But that's how you add keyframes and use keyframes. You start your keyframe where you want your thing to start, and then you go to the end where you want it to end up. And if you want it to be smooth, like this one, that's all you got to do. And if you want it to bounce around like this one, you got to add at least one in between.
Low budget, sometimes no budget horror film.
And that's keyframes in a nutshell. Now we're going to talk about volume, and you've seen me do it, especially just on the keyframe thing, because I turned the volume way down here. But over here in your inspector with the clip selected, if you have the audio lit up, which means that there's audio on the clip, you can change the audio. Now you can pan it left and right or whatever. You can change your pitch, but what I use a lot of is volume, because my microphone picks up okay. My camera mic picks up okay. But none of them are really loud enough for me, so I turn myself up to usually plus 14, plus 15 when I'm talking, and then I apply that noise reduction filter thing right here so that it cuts out the noise. But this is how you would change your volume, and you can keyframe your volume. We'll build on the keyframes from last time. Maybe I don't like whatever I said here. I'm not sure what that is. Let's zoom in a bit. This little bit here, I'm going to just chop it out. So my volume is 14.2 right there. I'll go forward 1 frame with the right arrow key, and I'll drop it to like nothing. Actually, let's undo that. Okay, right here is about where I want to be at the end. So now here, keyframe, drop to almost nothing. Go to about here, bring it back, it was 14.2. And you see it kind of ramps up a little. You could put more keyframes in here, like I probably should do right here, to make sure that it's real low. Here, I put it in another one. And if you look really closely, you can see a little line here from one keyframe to the next. It's a light colored line, you can hardly see it, but it is there. You can actually grab it, it's a line right there. My mouse has it now, and I could pull it up and down and it'll do the whole clip's volume at once. It's a really imprecise way to do it, but you can just yank it all the way down if you want to kill the audio on that clip. It's easier to just select the audio and click D on your keyboard, but this is how you keyframe audio to change your volume. We'll listen to it right now.
Low budget, sometimes no budget.
It kind of shot way down and then back up.
Low budget, sometimes no.
I would probably want more keyframes in here to keep it low, but that's how you keyframe audio if you need to cut it out. I could actually go here, go back a frame, and then shoot it way down again, and it'll pretty much cut it out, and then it'll jump straight up to 14.2 again. Let's zoom back out so I can move my playhead there.
Sometimes no budget.
I pretty much killed the audio, and you can see it here. It just follows these dots, and that's how you change volume on a clip. You can play around with these other settings too. I have a pre-made pitch for something, but you can on the fly edit the pitch of your audio if you'd like to. Okay, the last thing is images, and you saw me do this one already, but images on your videos help a lot, especially if you're talking about a thing and it's not on screen at the time. You can just bring it on screen. Movie reviews, which is one of the things I do, I constantly am putting pictures of the film, the poster, related things up on the screen. But any image you put here doesn't have to have a transparent background like this one. I have non-transparent as well. But any image you put here will be over your video. If you wanted your video on top, you'd move this up, but then you wouldn't see your picture, so it wouldn't matter. And it has the same properties as a video. You can use the transform on it. You can zoom it, you can move it, you can add keyframes to move it around the screen and kind of animate it. You can rotate it upside down. You can just type in these too. You don't have to use the slider. I'll pitch it this way, make my head look real big, and then I'm going to crop the top of it, which is the head, even though it's upside down. You can do all this stuff to it. Dynamic zoom, which was that keyframe thing I showed you where you zoom in slowly, and there are a bunch of options down here, but adding images and optionally sound effects underneath down here with the images to kind of make them whoosh in and out or bounce or have them scream, whatever you need them to do, is a nice way to make your videos just look nice. Make them look a little more professional and more interesting. It's really boring to just sit and watch one guy do one thing and never move or be dynamic at all. So hopefully that'll help you. Now, I hope you found this useful, and if you do, and you want to see more of the stuff that I've edited, I don't do a lot of editing tutorials, but please click the subscribe button or like the video, recommend it to people. You can talk to me in the comments as well. If I did something wrong here, or if you have other things you'd like to know about, let me know. I can do more of these videos, even though I don't do a lot of them. It's not my normal thing. I watch a lot. Also, there are several YouTube channels that I go to, and I'll link a few of them in the description, that have taught me how to do editing. Even if I don't use everything that they teach, I'll never need to track 3D text over an aerial shot of a church. But I watched somebody do it, and I learned how to do it, and it let me do a whole lot of the basics that I use every day in repetition, so that I get better at them and faster at them. One other thing I'll add as an 11th thing is keyboard shortcuts. There are a lot of them in DaVinci Resolve. You don't need to know every single one of them, but they will speed up your editing process. Spacebar is the play stop here for the preview and the timeline. The control / backslash is the cut button, which I use constantly. There are all kinds of keyboard shortcuts. If there's something that you find you're doing a lot of, find out if there's a keyboard shortcut for it, because I'm almost certain that there will be. So, this is Travis for Barry the Movie Demon saying have a good evening, and I'll see you at the movies.